back again with James. In the last video, he gave us a lot of pearls of wisdom, small ones, but they go a long way in analyzing the chart and making you understand how things can be wrapped up and they can be discerned very beautifully, especially the one with dasha bhukti and transit. If you haven't watched that video, do go back and watch it, because he gives it a cute example how you need to correlate your dasha bhukti and your transits. But before that, James has the entire repertoire of his experience in two books, very beautiful books that he has been working on updating. So James, can you just show the books to us so that we know which ones I am talking about?
Yeah, these are e-books now. This is the Art and Practice of Ancient Hindu Astrology. This is the one that is an advanced book, and it's in 2 volumes, $10 each. The e-books can be bought on BookBaby, a website called BookBaby. This is the book that came out just about a week or 2 ago. It's a book on Western aspects. But even though it's Western aspects, that's How to Be a Great Astrologer. But even though it's Western aspects, they're the same aspects. The conjunctions are the same. The oppositions are the same. So you can use that. This is the book that I wrote first, Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. That was my original book when I came back from India in 1982 and 3. And I'm updating that now, and it's taken me 4 or 5 months already, and I'm still not done. So it's going to be much better than
the original version.
Than the original. So even if you got the original, even if you got the original version, when this comes out, it'll be probably another 2 or 3 months, because I'm just updating everything. It's going to be a much better book. But let's get on to Martin Luther King. Yeah. And before I talk about Martin Luther King, I want to give some notes to get some tips. I always like to give some tips. So how to handle, and I may have spoken about some of this before, but it's worth repeating. When you get clients with a bad dasha, and we're talking a 6-year bad sun period, like Hillary a year before the election, a year or 2 before the election, hit a sun dasha in the 10th degree or 9th degree of Libra, just completely fallen, bad 6 years. Or you get clients with a bad 20-year Venus dasha, whatever it is. What do? Of course you can do the mantras and the yagyas and the praying and the fasting, and you can keep Thursdays restful and sacred for Jupiter. There's only a certain amount that's going to relieve. It will relieve some karma. They can get some help, but karma is karma. You're going to pay most of it back. So just a few things that people don't understand. The clients don't understand that when they are in a bad period of life, first of all, they probably don't know astrology. When they're in a bad period, they try harder. They try harder to succeed. And of course, it doesn't succeed because the period's so bad. Then they start to feel guilty. Then they start to think, what's the matter with me, right? So your job as an astrologer is to say, look, you've got a bad period coming. Just try to get through it. If you can close up shop, go meditate for 2 years or 3 years. But these are going to be long periods, 10 years, 16 years. They can be long. So in that period, you have to accept that you're not going to alter, you're not going to change the world, shake up the world, and be massively successful. It's fine to work to do that, but when that's not happening, and you know the dates of when it's going to be difficult, the idea is to pull back and just get through the period, to especially, instead of judging yourself, be good to yourself. In a bad period, instead of looking harshly on yourself, do extra things for yourself that make you happy, because that's what you need to do. Okay? The other thing is, the more that you can get your attention off of yourself, the better. So if you can, even though you're suffering, oh, I have no relationship, my love life is so bad and my money is so bad, all that stuff, it's not much going to change in a bad period. Focusing on it's going to bring misery. If you say, well, all right, so I'm going to follow Mother, I'm going to be like Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi, I'm going to go help other people and do charity, you can at least get something. So that's what I advise people, get the attention off themselves. Now, in some cases, you actually get a horoscope where the entire horoscope is bad. Or you get a horoscope where it's not a particularly good one, but all the dashas are bad. When you have that, you know, if you can explain to them, they're not going to be shocked unless they're 20, in which case I wouldn't exactly tell them it's going to be that bad. But if they're 30 or 40 and they already have seen how bad it is, you have to explain to them, this is the karma that you've got. And the more that your attention is on yourself in a life that's difficult, the more you're going to suffer. The more your attention's on other people and helping them, the less you're going to suffer. So that's really important. Another thing that I want to mention is I always tell clients, whether they know astrology or not, when I do horoscopes, I don't just say, this is how it is and this is how it is. I say, the moon is in this house, it's afflicted, it represents the emotions. I explain to them, because that's what astrology is. It's another way of viewing your life.
Right.
It doesn't help to say, this is great, this is bad, go away. No, this is great because it's like, you know, this planet is aspecting here and it's in its own sign. It gives them a second way of looking at their life. It's so wonderful. But in any case, I always tell the person, this house here, this is your strongest house. The chart I did the other day was the sixth house was so tremendously strong. And I said, your greatest gift is you have no enemies, because they were all benefics in the sixth. Your healing ability is wonderful. So you want to let them know the best, and I also let them know the worst. Then they can understand it. They're not going to remember the entire horoscope. They're going to hear it over and over, but if you give them, this is the best, this is the worst, that's easy for them to remember. And the best planet and the worst planet. Okay? So a lot of times the fifth house may be looking fantastic, but Jupiter is a mess. Jupiter's children, Jupiter's investments. So at least they know. So I find that helps. Another thing that we're going to talk about when we look at Martin Luther King's chart is the aspects when they're out of sign. So in other words, if you have, you know, let's say that you have Venus and Mars, and Venus is 18 Scorpio and Mars is 20, Venus is 18 Scorpio and maybe Mars is 22 Taurus, you know they're aspecting each other.
Right.
But when Venus is in 28 Taurus and Jupiter is 2 Sag, you don't see that, but they are aspecting each other.
Yes. Yes.
You've got to be able to see that, otherwise you're going to miss things, and I'll point that out. I'll point that out in the next chart. But just remember this: when you're looking at these degrees and these planets, you've got to see that sometimes the aspects aren't obvious because of they'll be at the edge of the sign.
Yes. Yeah. Changing sign. Yeah.
Another thing I want to mention is whether a person uses the mean node or the true node. Now, I used the true node for 30 years because I thought true sounds better, because I'm not scientific. When they try to describe what the heck the node is, my mind just goes blank. But I found out a few years ago that the mean node works better. And I got this from astrologers in India who said, they explained why from the scriptures, but I found it from experience that they were right. What I want to let you know about this is that you may think it's not so important because it's a 1 degree difference. That's all it is. The 1 degree difference, whether using the true node or the mean node, is going to be huge in the Varga charts, in the divisional, in the Navamsha, in the Dasamsha. That's where it goes from the 5th house to the 6th, or the 7th to the 1st. Sorry, 7th to the 8th. So you really need to find out what node you want to use. I use the mean. I think that's the most accurate.
Hmm.
The midheaven. Do you know the midheaven?
Yes.
Is it do most of the Hindu horoscopes show you the midheaven? No. Okay. So as I understood it, I never heard the midheaven used in the Hindu system. It was used. It's in the Western system. The midheaven is a horoscope. If you look, I don't know if I have a Western horoscope here. So this is the midheaven with Martin Luther King over here in, it says MC, which
Right.
means something like medium, celli or something.
Right.
The MC. So it turns out that he's got Mercury there in the 10th house. He's got the sun in the 10th house. But the sun is going to be much stronger because the sun is so close. It's within 3 degrees of the midheaven.
Right.
See that? So that sun on the midheaven is going to be more strong than the Mercury. But you have to have a computer that shows that. So we'll talk about Martin Luther King now.
Yeah. And just as I said in my last video, James does give readings and on the bullseye readings. So you can always go to his website, log in there, and get a reading booked with him. This is the MC that he was talking about for Martin King Luther. You can see that it's right there.
But in a Western chart, this is a funny Western chart. It really should be right at the top. This is a confusing.
So,
I don't know.
and this is what I got from the Astro Data Bank.
I know. It's okay. So the Martin Luther King chart is a fascinating one. It's a very, very spiritual chart. Obviously, Jupiter is in the 1st house. Normally, now he was a minister, and his father was a minister, and Saturn is in the 10th house, which is usually not so good for religion. This was a very religious person. That was his profession. And Jupiter is aspecting that Saturn tightly.
Saturn is in the 9th house, you mean?
Yeah. Saturn's in the 9th house, the house of religion. Saturn in the 9th house is usually not good for religion and philosophy and all that. But in this case, Saturn is 2 degrees of Sagittarius, aspected by Jupiter from 8 degrees of Aries. So that's a 6-degree aspect. And Jupiter's not just aspecting Saturn, Jupiter's aspecting Saturn in Jupiter's own sign. So the Saturn is going to become a much more positive influence. So the religion and the philosophy for him would be much more serious and committed and dedicated. It wouldn't be a light-hearted kind of religion and philosophy. It would be very, very strong responsibility, discipline, very real. Saturn is concrete form and structure. So it's a very, very spiritual chart. And not only is Jupiter in the 1st, but the 9th house ruler is in the 1st house. What I find so fascinating about this chart is the ability to speak. Rahu in Taurus, which is, according to Prashna, exalted. I've always said Rahu and Ketu function better for me in Virgo, but Taurus is excellent. So Rahu is in the house of speech, along with Mars. Now, this is a really, really powerful ability to speak, but it's also imagination. I've known actors that have Rahu in Taurus in the 2nd house, which is the imagination. The 2nd house is the imagination and the memory. And this is tremendous speaking ability, the Rahu Mars, but it's also tremendous imagination. But what I love so much about this chart is the Venus moon in the 11th house. And the 11th house is many things. It's large sums of money, it's friends and groups. But really, more than anything to me, and the eldest sibling, but really to me more than anything, it's the major goals and desires. It's your dreams. So he is known You know, he gave a million speeches, but when he said, "I have a dream," that stood out because the Venus moon in the house of dreams and visions and desires, it just stuck. It stuck. So that you know, that's a really, really wonderful symbolism there. And also the intelligence. You know, the Venus and moon aspect the fifth house, the house of the mind. It's not a very bright moon. Doesn't matter because it's with Venus. So this is important. I don't like to see a new moon or a dim moon in a horoscope. That means less abundance, less charisma, unless it's well aspected. And then it's just a great benefic. So the Venus and the moon aspecting that fifth house gave him the optimism. It actually gave him the happiness in the mind and the optimism of mind to think that this could actually be done. You know, he had optimism there. Now, the Venus-Moon conjunction, when Venus is conjunct the moon, opposite the moon, or in an angle, if they're in an angle, Kendra, from each other, then there's going to be a lot of sexual enjoyment and sensuality and all of that. And you know, the FBI or the CIA, they were monitoring him and they found that he had affairs, sexual affairs, and so they, you know, wanted the government was a real thorn in his side. And here's what I was talking about, how you've got to be able to see the out of sign aspects. It looks like Mars in Taurus is aspecting Scorpio. It is. It is. But it is also aspecting that Saturn. It's aspecting that Saturn, and that's the authorities that be, the you know, the authorities basically that got him into trouble. Now the sun in the 10th house is leadership. And again, even though this is normally you would say Mercury is stronger because the ascendant is 20 degrees and Mercury is 18 degrees, whereas the sun is 2 degrees. Right. Under normal conditions, that would be true. Mercury would have the strength because it's so close to the ascendant degree in the 10th house. But because of that midheaven, which is the career, the sun is 3 degrees away from that. So he was a leader. The leadership was very, very, very strong. And the sun is the ruler of the 5th house. And the 5th house is Purva Punya, or past life credit. Now, if the sun was in the 5th house next to a fallen planet, aspected by Saturn, then the past life credit would be a debt in the career. It would be that the person, first of all, Purva Punya or past life credit means the whole horoscope is your past life, you know, result of your past lives. But if it's connected to the 5th house, it means that's the credit or debt that must get paid off in this lifetime because the karma has built up so long. So if the sun was afflicted in the 10th house, that would, as the ruler of the 5th, that would mean that he was going to have big problems in the career. Instead, the sun is in the 10th house, and it's aspected by Mercury, which is a benefic. It's also aspected by Rahu, right? Now, Rahu's a malefic, right?
Right.
Rahu as a malefic, aspecting the sun as the father would not help. So in other words, his father, because the sun is the father, and it's aspected by Rahu, that could mean the father is overbearing or smothering or intense. That wouldn't be pleasant. But Rahu aspecting the sun as a career planet, that's where the power of Rahu comes in. Rahu aspecting the 10th house anyway is going to be worldly power for the career. Now it's aspecting a nice malefic that can do some good in the 10th house. So that Rahu is giving a bigger career, okay?
Expanding his career, in short, expanding his career to another level.
power, world. You have to think fame, worldly power, reaching the masses, reaching other countries. That's Rahu. Rahu is, if I use the word expanding, then I'm talking Jupiter. Jupiter aspecting the 10th house. Ooh, it's going to be a lucky career. You could have fame. You could have fame from Jupiter because it gives you luck and it expands it. Rahu is a completely different thing. Rahu is
hardcore material.
Hardcore material, cravings and desires. It's a beast. You know, I have Rahu in the 10th house. I've always had a beast in me that wants to have a big career, that wants to have a big influence. That's Rahu. So it's a malefic, but it does very well in aspecting 3, 6, 10, and 11. It's not going to help the brothers or sisters from the 3rd or 11th, but it'll help the other aspects. If it aspects the 3rd, it'll help the arts a lot, or the strong willpower.
Right.
He died in 1968, and it's not anything in April of 1968. It's not anything that I can see in particular. It doesn't. There's nothing for me that really shows up that much. But when he died, I don't know what the transits were that were going on, but he was very. When he died, he had no idea that he was going to be immortalized. Right before he died, he came out and gave a speech, and people said, "Don't do it." He said he came out against the Vietnam War. He said the United States is not helping the racial problem, it's not helping the poverty problem, and it's not helping the war problem in Vietnam. And he said if the United States continues like this, the country will go to hell. They said, "Please do not say that." He went out and said it. Everybody ran away from him. Everybody, the president, Lyndon Johnson, nobody wanted anything to do with him. He died in a very sad place in his life, but he was immortalized. And what makes a person immortalized, of course, fame is good and all, but when the 9th house is very, very powerful, after you die, your reputation goes up. John Kennedy with benefics, I think Jupiter and Venus or something, great, very strong 9th house. After he died, he became a saint. So that's his 9th house.
So that's a before we wind up for Martin King Luther's chart. Apart from this Ketu in the 8th house, did it also take him towards spirituality, as the Rahu took him towards a speech that was powerful, that reached across nations. Did the Ketu in him bring out, you've just in the last video?
I would say not spirituality. I would say in this case, because Ketu is in the 8th house of metaphysics, aspected by Mars, which is a very worldly planet. So Mars is aspecting its own sign, Scorpio. I would say he had a very sexy appearance, probably to women. They probably found him very sexy. It gave a tremendous amount of life, energy, and enthusiasm, and it gave tremendous psychic ability. I think it gave him tremendous intuition, tremendous psychic ability, things like that. It absolutely, positively harmed his family life. You're looking at, even though Rahu's exalted, which is great for money, imagination, speaking, bad for family life. And with Mars there in a bad sign, opposite its own sign, Scorpio, he's got 2 malefics in the house of family life. Family life must have been discordant in a major way. I don't know enough about him, but it had to be. There's no way it wouldn't. But I think that for the spirituality, I'd be looking more at the 12th house, and I think that there is spirituality connected to the 12th ruler, Jupiter, in the 1st house, the Jupiter in the 1st house. This was an activist. This was a person who was taking this is such a extroverted chart. This is not an introverted chart. And spirituality is introspective. So it's a highly spiritual chart, but completely directed outward. So the religion and philosophy was there to spread to the people with that ninth house. Moon and Venus, he had big desires. This guy had big dreams and big desires. He was going to change the world. And the sun and Mercury in the 10th house aspected by Rahu, he was going to change the world. So it's a spiritual chart, but not like I'm going to go and meditate somewhere. That's not the case. If he went to meditate somewhere, if he tried to meditate like for 3 or 4 hours a day for a month or two at a time at an ashram, I think he'd go crazy, because his desires would be pulling on him so much from the Venus moon in the 11th, his desire to get out to the public and educate them. In that sense, that's how I use the term spiritual. And speaking of spiritual, I want to mention something that I forgot to mention. And that is that if you're going to be an astrologer, you better have a really strong, definite understanding of what enlightenment is. Because people are going to ask you, will I get enlightened? Can I get enlightened? And I'm going to tell you, you're not going to be able to find anything in the horoscopes of these highly evolved gurus. They are enlightened. I have no doubt they're enlightened, but you're not going to find anything that's specific. There it is. He's enlightened. That person's not. You're not going to find that. And so you need to have a real strong understanding of what enlightenment. And sometimes I'll ask the person, I follow Advaita or non-duality, which simply means once you know and have the full, absolute 100% conviction, you know I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the thoughts and feelings. Who I am is the consciousness and awareness that is with me all the time. That's my true nature. All you can do is know that. This idea that you're going to have bliss 24 hours a day, nobody has it. This idea that that you'll never have a button to be pressed, no reference point, nobody has that. Find me any guru and I'll find their reference point. If I say, I'm going to kill your mother, you're going to see their reference point come out. If not, they're a zombie. Anyway, that's what I follow, non-duality. But sometimes I'll say, well, what's your definition of enlightenment? If they say bliss 24 hours a day, I'll say, find me someone who has it. I don't believe it exists. I'll explain so if that's for your definition, no, I don't think you will. If you're talking about the understanding of your true nature, that's certainly possible if I see it in the horoscope. But it has to be a real strong, absolute conviction, because you can get it intellectually, but you always have doubts until you really do that investigation and really get it solidified. There'll always be doubts, and that's really important, because you're going to get a lot of people asking, will I get enlightened? Can I get enlightened? What's your definition?
It's been a beautiful interview, and the icing on the cake was the last part of it, where James says, what is enlightenment? In one of the previous interviews, if you've gone through those videos, if you've not gone through them, please do go through them. And if you've gone through them, he mentions a line. He says, but at the end of the day, all of this is a dream. So there are a lot of beautiful things that he does, give you on and off. If you haven't watched his videos or haven't read his books, please do so. This was a beautiful book where he explains, a beautiful interview where he explains the intricacies of Venus moon, Mars and Rahu, and Jupiter, Sun, making a beautiful point on the MC, Midheaven. Do go through it again. It'll help you in your day-to-day analysis. Don't forget to use transits with it. Thank you so much, James. It has been a pleasure. We hope to see you once more with something more to teach us.
Thank you.